Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Cons of Tarkir here in Hawaii. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Zach Hill, and we are ready for our second quarterfinal match of the day. We have Thiago Saporito from Brazil, 12-3-1 yesterday with Abzan Midrange to put himself into the top 8. His opponent, a young man, only 19 years old, Ondrej Strasky. He is a Magic Online Championship Series competitor from Czech Republic, and he is on Jeskai wins. Though, as we go through this match, Zach, we'll start to note some of the differences. For those of you who are watching live with us, we just watched Jeskai wins versus Abzan Midrange, and now we're watching it again, but these decks are much different than the ones that we just saw.
Yeah, I mean, Strasky's got main deck Ash Cloud, Phoenix, 3 copies, Storm Breath, Dragon, Hushwing Griff.
In the main!
In the main deck, as well as Banishing Light, which you didn't have. Same thing with Saporito, 1 copy of Thoughtseize in the main, 4 Wingmate Rock, 4 Fleece Mane Lion, which Ari had 0 copies of, and Saporito just no Elspeth. So even though the archetypes are the same, the specific compositions of these decks is quite a bit different. Hushwing Griff in particular very big in this matchup. You heard Ari talking about how big a deal Siege Rhino was. Griff makes that card not a particularly big problem.
All right, so the early stages have unfolded here. It's Ondrej Strasky's turn. Facing down a Sylvan Caryatid and just has to play an island and pass the turn back to Thiago here.
And Thiago's got exactly what you want in this matchup, which is Courser of Crufix. He's even able to play it without playing a land the turn, trying to hit an extra land off the top. Doesn't have it. Still going to gain a life, though, from the Temple in his hand.
Probably going to keep that Siege Rhino right where it sits, too, as that's one of the best cards in his deck, if not the best card. And Ondrej Strasky cannot be happy to see the way that things have unfolded in the early stages here. He's done absolutely nothing thus far, and his opponent has accelerated mana, put out one of his better creatures, and has his best creature sitting on top of his library. But here's the good news for Ondrej. He does have the turn 3 Manus Rider.
Manus Rider, one of the most powerful cards in the matchup. No Bile Blights happening for Saporito. He's got 2 copies in the main deck, doesn't have any in his hand. What he does have is a Siege Rhino that he knows he can sneak through Hushwing Griff and a Sorin threatening to deal a lot of damage. Lightning Strike and Magma Jet from Strasky, not going to kill anything at this point in the game.
Here's an attack now from Courser of Crufix right into the Mantis Rider. Essentially a free attack here, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, what he's doing is bluffing the Abzan Charm.
Right.
And, I mean, Strasky obviously has a lot to lose on this block. But, you know, if he blocks for free, he can gain 2 life points. You see him.
That's a tough spot. It could absolutely just be a bluff. There's really no downside for Thiago. And it worked. Ondrej took it. So here's the first Siege Rhino, and if you look at the top of his library, there's another one there looming, Zach. This draw from Saporito has been fantastic. He doesn't play a land this turn either.
Yeah, I mean, that 3 life from the Rhino representing essentially an entire turn from attacks from the Manus Rider, and just so much damage. I mean, once this Abzan Midrange deck starts getting ahead, it is so hard for Jeskai wins to come back.
He's got another Siege Rhino in his hand, too. This is insane. He is going to play 3 Siege Rhinos here.
Oh, my goodness.
Potentially just run them out in a row.
I mean, it's hard to ask for a better draw in this matchup.
All right, he's going to attack again with the Courser, and Ondrej is now in that same spot, and he's had enough. He's not taking any more from it. He knows he's falling behind, and Thiago says, yeah, I didn't have it, but I do have another Siege Rhino that you saw me draw, so here it is, and that's going to drop down Strasky even further. Strasky finds a second copy of Mantis Rider, but it looks like he's falling behind in this race way too quickly for those to take over.
I mean, 2 Manus Riders means he does get to double block Siege Rhino. He knows that Saporito doesn't have an Abzan Charm just yet, because if he did, he probably would have used it to kill the Siege Rider.
I mean, he still could have just said, I'd rather just keep developing my board. It's an interesting thought process there from Strasky as well about whether he actually thinks that Thiago has the Abzan Charm or not.
There's a land finally on the top of Saporito's deck, able to gain him a life, give him access to another mana, being able to play both Courser and Fleece Mane Lion, or activate Sorin, or... I mean, he's just got a lot of options.
He's got so many options, and they're all fantastic here. Saporito really with a pretty sweet draw against Strasky here, though. Strasky does have 6 power in the air. All right, Rhino hits the red zone, and Strasky says no block. So down to 8. And are we just going to see another Rhino here from Saporito?
Interesting. Saporito not yet playing the land off the top of the library. I don't know if that's because he doesn't need the additional information about what's on top of his deck, or he just doesn't want to let Strasky know what's coming up before the block.
Mm.
And a lot
Now,
of
is
options.
Disdainful Stroke in the main deck here for Strasky?
Disdainful Stroke does not appear to be in the main deck.
Okay.
Looks like he has 3 copies in the sideboard.
All right, so Thiago doesn't have to worry about that at this point. Strasky only has 2 mana up.
Just tanking.
Both of these players are in their first Pro Tour top 8.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the downside of playing Siege Rhino is here. I mean, if it's one of your best cards, your opponent's at 8, you want to get a lot of damage on the battlefield. I mean, a lot of it is just trying to figure out what you're playing around, what burn spells you have to worry about. Your opponent's going to crack in for 6 damage.
Yes.
So, you know, I mean,
he's going to be at 16. It'll drop him down to 10, but I mean, this is definitely a race that Thiago could lose. It is not completely locked up for him, but I agree with you, Zach. I'm just windmilling the Siege Rhino there. That sets up fantastic next turn on the back of Sorin, Solemn Visitor.
Right. Yeah, 2 5/5 lifelinks, a 3/4 lifelink. It's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
We can't
2 of them have trample, too. It's just
right. And there's no skull crack in the format anymore. There's no effect that prevents your opponent from gaining life that could at all be plausible in the main deck. I mean, they know each other's deck lists, but one of the dynamics of the previous standard format was you couldn't just fire off a Sphinx's Revelation for 6 life. Your opponent responds with a skull crack. In this format, absent something like Hushwing Griff, which I think was a tremendous innovation from Strasky, like your Rhinos are going to gain you life. Strasky looking at the scry on Magma Jet, but I mean, it's hard to think of what cards he can draw that do the job for him. I mean, what he needs is Elspeth, but I don't think that's in his deck.
I don't think so either. Okay, he's going to attack with both and drop him down to 11. And kind of give a little head shake here.
I mean, he's got 7.
Also, a little face slap. You ever do that? I've seen multiple players do that now.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Is it a concentration thing? Is it a wake you up thing?
It's a focus thing, I think, most of anything. Just kind of presence yourself. Not to be too much of a hippie about it.
Strasky passes the turn, but he keeps shaking his head. It looks like maybe he feels like he's missed an opportunity. Maybe he's just lamenting the fact that he's getting kind of ran over, even with a reasonable board presence here. Maybe he's super close to actually having won the game.
I mean, Saporito has something close to the exact ideal draw. I mean, his Fleece Mane Lions haven't really done a lot this game, but triple Siege Rhino backed by Sorin Solemn Visitor. I mean, if you could draw that every game in this matchup, you'd take that in a heartbeat.
Wait.
He's saying, wait up.
Ooh. So what has happened is Thiago has cracked his fetch land here,
So
dropping him down to 10.
Strasky could theoretically have, what, Stoke the Flames,
Strike.
Strike, or Stoke, Strike.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I mean, he only has 2 cards.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you can only cast 2 of them.
Oh, one of the things he could do is Jeskai Charm in response, putting a Rhino on top of the deck,
Absolutely.
which would essentially just kill it. That's actually big.
So Strasky doesn't know currently about Sorin. If that wasn't in play here, does he have a way to actually survive and even with throwing Jeskai Charm and Lightning Strike at his opponent live? You know, and hoping to draw, say, another Jeskai Charm or a Stoke.
So
Doesn't feel likely, but Sorin is going to put a huge wrench in that plan no matter what.
So if he Jeskai Charms a Rhino, that deals with 5 damage and life. He can double block the other Rhino. He takes 3 from Courser, and Saporito gains 8.
Gains 8.
So, I mean, it's not good for Strasky.
Right, yeah, it's so tough.
It means the game doesn't end immediately. I mean, still, though, I think
there
you play
is
Soren
for Saporito. Ondrej can do nothing but nod. He's going to plus Soren and attack, and this huge life swing should put Saporito in the driver's seat to take the first game here against Ondrej Strasky. Ondrej does have the tools he needs to not die this turn.
Yeah, he's not attacking with Courser either.
You got a jam.
I mean, Courser's a 3/4. It can attack right through those Manus Riders.
Yes.
Looks like he wants to keep it back.
Why?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I'm trying to think about it. I mean, I guess it can block a Goblin Rabble Master next turn. It's got 3 points of lifelink. So
yeah, but so can the
Carry-Added.
It's also got that bonus from the Soren, so I think I just jammed in there with the old Courser.
Good old Courser.
I get 8, I just 5, so I get 3.
So this should put Ondrej down to 3.
So he's tapping the Carry-Added, but yeah, he's got a Lion, so. All right. Well, Saporito, 22 life.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the key here. Thiago Saporito, due to that Soren attack, is now at 22 life and well out of any hope of burn range from Ondrej. And now Ondrej is left with the problem, and you can see what a big issue it is, of figuring out how to manage the board state now with the tools he has in his hand, and he doesn't have what he needs.
It doesn't. It looks like Jeskai Charm gave the Manus Riders +1/+1 on lifelink.
Gotcha. Rather
than putting the Siege Rhino on top like we were talking about. So that gave Ondrej a little bit more padding to work with.
Yeah, because Siege Rhino on top is... He gets to recast it.
Yeah, right. It gets to trigger again. I mean, the downside of that is that Saporito got to gain just a ton more life.
Right.
Soren's still not off the battlefield, still causing problems, and Fleecemane Lion just adding to the brutality.
Yeah, Ondrej, I think, is going to lose next turn here. Well, that is if Thiago decides to send in. You had an opportunity to get potentially 3 more damage through that turn, dropping Ondrej down to 5 instead of 8.
I guess Courser would have been able to get eaten by a Manus Rider if it had attacked.
Yeah, but then both of the Rhinos would survive.
Rhinos
so
get through. Yeah.
Feels like a reasonable spot for Thiago. Well, Ondrej is... he's going to make sure. I mean, he's only got 1 card in his hand.
Rider's still able to get in for 3 damage.
Yeah, I can take down Soren.
I mean, Saporito just kind of waiting to see. Yeah.
All right, and there was no possible way. He just wanted to make sure, but that is going to do it for the first game. Thiago Saporito with what has to be described as just a fantastic draw, runs over poor Ondrej there with a bunch of Rhinos. All right, why don't we take a look. Zach, I want you to grab the sideboards and start doing a little research. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick listen in to what these two gentlemen have in mind for their sideboards, and then we'll discuss it a little further when we get back to the booth.
All right, Thiago, tell me about what your plan is after game 1. What cards you're going to bring in, and what cards you're going to take out.
Yeah, I'm going to bring the other end, the erase. And if I'm on the play, I will bring the Anafenza and maybe some Fatis. I'm not sure how many. And I will remove 2 Silver Carriages, 1 Courser of Prefix, 1 Drawing Sorrow.
Okay. And then how do you feel your matchup? Does it improve or does it get worse after sideboarding?
It will get worse because his sideboard is better than mine. I mean, I don't have cards that are good against him. And he has like many cards that are good against me.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck with it.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully we'll see you more this weekend.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Ondrej. Tell me what your plan is after game 1. Which of these cards are you going to be using to try to build up your matchup here?
So it's rather complicated. I have different plans on play and on draw. So on play, we figured we're going to bring in 3 Prognostic Sphinx and 3 Disdainful Strokes. We are going to side out Magma Jet, which is the weakest card in the matchup, and then, kind of surprisingly, we are going to side out all 3 Banishing Lights because the card is very good in this matchup, but he's bringing in Back to Nature, Atrovent, and Erase, so that makes Banishing Light a little worse. But on draw, we have to keep up with the enchantments, so we bring in 3 Suspension Fields, we keep the Banishing Light in, we bring only 2 Prognostic Sphinx because it's pretty slow on draw, and also only 2 Strokes. And we side out all 4 Magma Jets, 1 Charm, 1 Jeskai Charm, 1 Stoke the Flames, and 1 Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Wow.
Okay, so it's really complicated. Hopefully it will work out. It's kind of gamble with the Banishing Lights. Maybe he won't bring Back to Nature in, and then it's pretty bad. But
Okay, well, we'll see. Good luck the rest of the match.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so what did you make of that? That sounded like a pretty complex plan that Ondrej's team's come up with.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a great gambit because, I mean, obviously Banishing Light and Suspension Field, some of those powerful cards in the matchup, he has them specifically for this matchup, you would have to expect. But if you think your opponent's bringing in 2 cards that are literally dead if you do that, Erase and Back to Nature, and that doesn't, you don't have to worry about kind of getting blown out in the mid-combat, that really could pay off. I also like that because you have to expect, just based on the matchups that we've seen, none of which have been particularly close in favor of the Jeskai player, that you kind of need to take a risk on that side of the matchup in order to try and eke some advantage out somewhere. That said, I think Strasky's deck is just configured pretty well for this matchup. I really think Hushwing Griff can do some valuable work. So, it's hard to say whether that gambit's going to pay off or not. The main takeaway for me is that I think Saporito is exactly right when he says Strasky's deck gets much better after sideboarding. I mean, Saporito's plan was bring in a card here, bring in some supplemental things there, maybe bring in Thoughtseize. I mean, he's just not changing his deck up very much.
He's not like radically changing the way that his deck approaches the game. He's just improving a card here, maybe cutting one that's not quite as powerful, where Strasky looks like he's taking a much more radical approach to sideboarding. I mean, geez, he has a completely different plan for being on the play on the draw as well. Normally maybe you'll see an extra land come in, or you'll see, a few cards here and there, but it sounds like he's got 2 wildly different ideas for what he wants to do on the play on the draw.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. I'm surprised he's not bringing any copies of Inhostilities. If he's bringing in more Thoughtseize, more answers like Utter End, and he knows his opponent is going to bring in between 2 or 3 Prognostic Sphinx, it seems like you'd want to have an answer to that card somewhere, at least to have access to it, especially if you're trimming your Sylvan Caryatids, meaning you're having fewer creatures that are just sitting around on the battlefield that would die to Inhostilities. I mean, on the other hand, you are a creature deck, so it may just be too hard to architect a board state where Inhostilities is good enough for you. Looks like that Ondrej's taking a mulligan, though, which is definitely not what you want to do. Oh, or he's just taking a long time to shuffle. I'm surprised that Strasky was saying take out an Ash Cloud Phoenix. I mean, when your opponent is trying to just kill all of your creatures and has cards like Wingmate Rock that seem to match up pretty poorly against the Phoenix, the intuition would be that Phoenix is actually pretty valuable in this matchup, but you may just not want to have too many expensive cards.
So the Magma Jets are coming out as well. Said it's the worst card in the matchup.
Yeah, it just doesn't kill anything. I mean, we saw it deal with one of Ari's Elvish Mystics. Saporito doesn't even play Elvish Mystic, so I think Magma Jet has literally 0 targets in the main deck. I mean, I guess it could kill a Sorin or a Sorin Vampire token, but that's not exactly what you want that card to be doing.
Okay, Strasky's kept. And does Saporito have as good of a draw as he did last time?
I mean, it looks like Strasky.
He does. All right, so it looks like both players have kept.
Can we start? Can we start, please? Start, thank you.
And we are underway. So here's Ondrej Strasky leading things off with Temple of Triumph. Now he's on the play, a much more comfortable spot to be in. He's going to look to try to get ahead and stay ahead throughout the duration of this game.
It looks like he is keeping in Banishing Light He's got a Seeker of the Wind. It's a pretty aggressive draw.
Seeker of the Way can get in for a lot of damage and gain him a lot of life in the early stages.
And Saporito, you saw him tanking on even that first land play. I mean, when you have different enter the battlefield tap lands, different scries, different things you're looking for. I mean, every single land you play matters, including which temple, Temple of Silence or Temple of Plenty.
Yeah, he went with Temple of Plenty here. And back to Ondrej Strasky. Card on top there for Saporito as well. So
Strasky's entire bearing changes, whether he's in the driver's seat or whether he's on his back foot. I mean, you see him leaning forward in his chair, shuffling his cards around more rapidly. He's really excited, it looks like, to have that Seeker of the Way in play and actually be able to provide some pressure on Saporito right now.
not a bad draw there for Strasky.
I mean, something that seems really awesome, too, is being able to just demolish your opponent with Suspension Field and Banishing Light, then have your opponent bring in Back to Nature and a bunch of answers for, and just side him out on the draw.
Yeah, so he just drew that Suspension Field off the top and plays it on the Fleece main line, which allows him to get in for 3 damage with Seeker of the Way.
I don't know where the way is, but he's certainly looking for it.
He's looking. I think he's got it in his mind that it's right through Thiago Saporito. He's going to keep bashing with that thing over and over again. And it looks like Ondrej's going to add to his board with a nice one here.
And this is the
Yes,
draw
indeed.
from Jeskai Wins that we just haven't seen yet, of just early pressure, the right answers. He's got Disdainful Strokes in his hand for those rhinos. I mean, if every draw were like this from Jeskai Wins, you'd be like, how on earth can Abzan even win this matchup?
Right.
But I mean, it's just kind of exactly what Strasky's needed.
Yeah, so now Strasky can sit back a little bit here. He's still ahead in the damage race even after the Siege Rhino from Thiago Saporito.
It is hard to cast something like Banishing Light on a Rhino precisely because if Saporito has a card like Erase, it's just so bad for Strasky.
I think you just let him have it. I mean, he can't really do much here, right? Like if Saporito starts attacking, then Strasky can start attacking back with his Seeker of the Way and even gaining life, offsetting the damage, or some of the damage from the Siege Rhino. And the Mantis Rider's just going to keep bashing away in the air, chipping away at Thiago's life total in pretty big chunks as he goes. So Ondrej Strasky, we mentioned it in the first game. It's all about getting ahead, staying ahead, and right now he's ahead. So he just needs to get one step further ahead here and stay there. And I like where he's at right now.
Yeah, and that's what's happening in this matchup. I mean, Saporito's particular build of this, it plays some cheaper threats like Fleecemane Lion, but it also has 4 Wingmate Rock, 4 Rhino, which just walks right into the Disdainful Strokes.
Right.
And Saporito having to commit his entire turn to casting those cards, it just means that Strasky's going to be able to stay ahead on the board this entire time.
Yeah, those Disdainful Strokes are going to do serious work because I think Thiago has multiple Siege Rhinos going again.
Which is not a bad place to be, but it's just so much worse after sideboard when your opponent has that many more answers for them. Strasky just trying to figure out, okay, is it worth casting Banishing Light on that Rhino or just keeping mana up? It looks like he said just pass the turn.
Yeah, I think it's on Saporito now.
I mean, oh, wow. So this Thoughtseize is huge for Saporito. I mean, as it happens, Strasky has 2 Disdainful Strokes.
Right.
There's no way of Saporito to know that.
The question is, does Strasky want to fire off a Stoke here? No. No, he needs to leave up Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, and
I mean, Saporito is at 10 here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Saporito, it's hard. Like, you want to take a Stroke because of what your hand is. You want to take Banishing Light so you don't get hit for 6 on the counterattack. You want to take Stoke in order to survive. I mean, this is a bad situation for Saporito. Really, every single card in Strasky's hand is relevant.
It feels just like game 1, but flipped. Now, you know, Strasky's had just really a great draw here against the hand that Thiago has drawn, where Strasky was able to go threat on turn 2, threat on turn 3, and then have burn and answers for the rest of his hand here. And, you know, that Thoughtseize, the 2 life from that Thoughtseize is a big deal, too.
Yeah, I mean, Thoughtseize really is a card that you're actively excited to draw in this situation where you have a 4-mana threat, you want to get a counter out of your opponent's hand, you want to make sure he doesn't have Hushwing Griff, you want to take an answer if you can. I mean, you know something's up because your opponent just passed the turn with 3 mana. But I mean, when every card in his hand is relevant, you just don't have that many good options.
And he's going to take the Stoke the Flames from his opponent here.
And that's at least a bit surprising, given that Banishing Light represents 3 damage because it allows Seeker the way to get through. But, I mean, you're obviously, whenever you're at 10 life, scared of any way for your opponent to deal you 4 damage to the face.
All right, so Saporito has to make a follow-up play here. He's got his land drop for the turn. Is he going to have to just start jamming threats right through? Seems pretty rough. He's at 10 life, but yeah, he's just going to play a Siege Rhino, which is going to get immediately Disdainful Stroked. He knew that was going to happen, but he had to do it anyway.
Right, because it's way easier for Strasky to leave up 2 mana every turn than it is for Saporito to leave up 4. So it's not really in the cards for him to be able to just say, okay, you know, I'm going to wait out these counter spells, especially not when he's getting hit for 3 in the air every turn.
All right, and there's Banishing Light, which is going to enable a 6-point swing here for Strasky. He is going to leave the door open, but he knows that now Sorin isn't as big of a threat with no creatures on the battlefield. He knows that a single Siege Rhino is not going to get him out of this because he's actually got a nice follow-up play here as well with Lightning Strike as a backup plan. So Ondrej Strasky making a big play here. And there's a Wingmate Rock, so that's a pretty nice stabilizer there for Saporito, though it does not have Raid. And there's 2 Lightning Strikes, both of them at your face. He drew one for the turn. He had one in his hand, and Saporito's kind of looking at it. He shows it to him, and Saporito says, cool, man.
Yeah, right.
Which is exactly what you should do there. And that's going to do it. Ondrej Strasky wins the 2nd game to force a Game 3. Now, his sideboard plan worked. What did he bring in, Zach?
Yeah, so Saporito, really similar to what he said on the video, he took out 2 Caryatid, took out a Drown in Sorrow and an Unoffensive for 3 Thoughtseize and an Erase. This is interesting because, I mean, what we heard from Ari was that, you know, the most important card was Goblin Rabblemaster, and you needed Drown in Sorrow. Saporito actually taking Drown in Sorrow out. Similarly, we saw Yuya take out all of the Lightning Strikes, thought that they were bad in the matchup, didn't kill anything relevant. Strasky, we saw leaving at least 2 of them in, he actually only takes out 1. I think part of that difference might be the presence of Fleecemane Lion in Saporito's deck. So it's interesting to see how the different players prioritize different things.
Now, talking about the Abzan deck, the sort of the card of the deck, right, is Siege Rhino. Right. I mean, that is the reason to play it. I talked to Mike Sigrist, who played a more aggressive version of the deck that Saporito's on, but still, it was an Abzan deck, and Siege Rhino is the guy. How important is this card for Standard, Zach?
I mean, I think it's one of the reasons to play the deck. I mean, Patrick Chapin wrote an article that was essentially all about this card. I mean, you know, if you think of it, you're paying white, black, green for a 4/5 trample. And then, you know, the only drawback is that you're required to spend an additional mana to cast your opponent loses 3 and you gain 3, right? And, you know, essentially for not even the cost of the card. I mean, it's essentially...
You're getting great deals on both of those.
Exactly. I mean, like, think about what a 4-mana, 4/5 trample haste that gains you 3 life would cost. I mean, that's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically what this is.
Yeah, that's 6-7 mana, and it's, you know, easy.
Yeah, exactly. And the losing 3 life is almost like haste. You know, it's 3 damage instead of 4 damage immediately, but your opponent also can't block it, can't kill it, can't do anything. So, I mean, this card is pushed to the extreme. Really one of the reasons to be in this color combination in the first place. And I think, you know, we have not seen any Abzan deck, at least in the feature match area, probably at the entire tournament, that doesn't play 4 copies of Siege Rhino.
Now, on the other side, we have Ondrej Strasky, and he decided to go for a Jeskai build. And, you know, there is a arguably equally good creature on the other side in Mantis Rider. And, you know, Mantis Rider is sort of the Jeskai Siege Rhino, or maybe the other way around.
I mean, a card that we've seen, you know, all play in Modern, even fairly recently, is Lightning Angel, which is 4 mana for a 3/4 flying Vigilance Haste. So you get 1 mana less
Which is a lot.
Which is a huge amount. That's casting this on turn 3 instead of turn 4. And the only drawback is a single point of toughness.
Right.
And, that's a card that's seen play in a ton of different formats, not just standard. So Manus Rider, another card that, when you open it in the booster pack, you realize, okay, this is an incentive to be Jeskai.
Right. And you mentioned it, too, about cards being pushed. And what you were talking about was through the development process in R&D, right? Where sometimes it's like, let's bump this one up. Let's turn the knobs on this one up even a little higher. And that's what they did here, too.
Right. One of the things you have to do, standard before Khans of Tarkir hit was very much about powerful monocolored decks exploiting the devotion strategies from Theros block. Now, some of that was because of Mutavault, some of that was because of the cards. But when you're saying, okay, the format's not going to be about single color strategies, but it's instead going to be about 3-color tribes, you've got to provide some incentive to get players to want to be able to do that, to get excited about playing these risky mana bases in this totally new format. So you need cards that are just loud and clear saying, play Jeskai, play Abzan. And that's what these are doing.
And is it, the vibe I always get when I talk to people, the people that work in R&D, and you had a long stint in there as well as a developer, is that, there's some freedom on your end, too, when you get handed a card like, well, we need a 3-color rare that's Jeskai, right? Like, you can push it with 3 colors, right? There's a lot of freedom gained on the development end by having triple color.
Well, exactly. We saw that with Shards of Alara coming out, and there were so many cards in that format, everything from Esper Charm to Woolly Thoctor, that were cards that you're saying, okay, 3 mana, 5/4. All right, you don't just get that by paying colorless. But when you're in a wedge, as you're calling it, or a shard, as they were called then, that basically means that your mana, in exchange for bending over backwards to cast the card in the first place, you get really rewarded once it's on the battlefield. One of the multicolored sets are really, really really popular and really powerful sets. The appeal of multicolor is clearly not that it's like, oh yes, I'm excited. It's harder to cast my spell.
Right.
That's obviously not what's going on. What's exciting is the payoff you get from being willing to jump through that hoop. And cards like Siege Rhino, cards like Manus Rider are that payoff. And that's why they're seeing play in the top 8 today, is players were able to figure out how to exploit those opportunities.
Right. So those are kind of the juicy center of these decks that we see here in our second quarterfinal, third game of it. But there's a whole lot going on around them as well, with sideboarding and jockeying for position and seeing, who brought in what. It looks like Strasky's going to take a mulligan here, and Saporito's kept his hand. He's going to be on the play for this game is Saporito, as he was able to really dominate the first game of this match with Siege Rhino after Siege Rhino after Siege Rhino, putting Strasky, who had a decent draw himself, just never really in the game. In the second game, though, the table was flipped, where Strasky all of a sudden had a Seeker of the Way into a Mantis Rider and was able to back that up with multiple burn spells and counter spells, and just had a draw that, even though it looked like Saporito had a lot of tools to work with and a lot of options, just none of them mattered.
Yeah, exactly. In Strasky just able to just neutralize every single threat that Saporito had before Saporito was able to even get it on the battlefield.
Right. Now, we're talking about draw versus play here as well, Zach, where, the player who was on the play won both of the games, so far. Is that extra important here, or is it just happen to be that way?
I think it's pretty important. There's these huge tempo swings every single turn. You're attacking not for, 1 damage here, 2 damage here. You're not sitting around drawing cards. You're smashing in for 3 and 4 damage at a time. Being able to get first blood, I think, just vital.
Okay, looks like the players, I think they've actually just started playing here, so we'll jump back down to our feature match for Game 3 here. This is to make it into the semifinals.
Something I'm excited about is just to see how Strasky's board plan on the draw is or is not different. He was saying it was a pretty radical change. We're going to have to see how effective that is.
I'm curious. All right, so let's see. All right, well, there's not going to be a 2-drop for Strasky this time, as he's played 2 enters the battlefield tap lands back-to-back. This one, Temple of Epiphany, at least is going to get him a Scry. Mystic Monastery doesn't, but it does open up basically him being able to cast anything he wants down the stretch. Now, let's take a look at Saporito's hand. He's got a pair of Lands of Thoughtseize and a pair of Courser of Krufix, so pretty good. Not super assertive here, but he is going to start grinding away advantage with these coursers.
Yeah, and having a Courser on...
Jeez,
wow.
Is it just... Like, does he just do that? Is that how that works? Do those two cards come together? Every single time he's flipped up for Corsair, there's been a Siege Rhino sitting on top of his library.
That is a reason to play the deck, and I guess he does have 4 copies of it. But I mean, and let's not understate the importance of Corsair of Krufix here too. I mean, when you have that card on the battlefield, it's not getting threatened or opposed. It's going to draw you several cards over the course of the match, provide some light pressure and defense, and also just pad your life total.
All right, so Saporito fires off the Thoughtseize here, and he's going to start jotting down what's in Strasky's hand, which looks like Strand Strike, Suspension Field, Banishing Light, Manus Rider, Stoke. So we do see both Banishing Light and Suspension Field here, Zach.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like his plan of, sideboard those out, one on the play and keep him in on the draw or vice versa. I mean, either way, it looks like he's just saying, look, these cards are too important. I can't take them out. I mean, and that makes sense. He essentially has 2 mana, 3 mana, kill anything his opponent casts. It's hard to pass up that opportunity.
Especially because, his deck actually is set up to capitalize on the fact that, yes, you might get this back later, but if you don't in the next turn or two, then it won't matter anyway.
Exactly.
All right, so it looks like Suspension Field is what Saporito took with his Thoughtseize. He's got 3 cards left in his hand as he passes the turn back to Strasky. Hasn't played a land yet for the turn.
And one of the
Hasn't
cards
played a spell yet in the game either.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of playing the waiting game. He's got that Bile Blight for the Manus Rider, which is just so important because I think that Strasky, if he's unable to provide pressure, he's got these answers, but, cards like Lightning Strike just not very efficient. I mean, they're going to the Dome. They can deal with a Fleecemane Lion, sort of, but I have to expect that every single turn the game drags on, it just gets better and better for Saporito. Because of all these, burn spells are just not terribly efficient because of the possibility that Saporito can blow up Banishing Light and Suspension Field.
All right, Jeskai Charm to put your Corsair back on top of your library. So a big tempo play from Strasky, but this is the type of play that you want to have when you have a threat on the board already, and he doesn't. So he's, just sort of putting a delay here on Saporito, who is just going to replay and replay. And this also, of course, keeps that Siege Rhino safely on top of the library there for Strasky. Maybe gives him another chance to try to find an answer for it.
Yeah, it definitely gives him the opportunity to draw a Disdainful Stroke. We see Stoke the Flames hitting the Corsair, but that means the Manus Rider is not ticking down at Saporito's life total, and it just makes it easier for Saporito to keep open those 2 black mana for Bile Blight, which prevents Manus Rider from even hitting him once. I mean, it's possible that Strasky's just said, okay, there's some plan wherein I can be the control deck, try to answer everything before it matters.
So is that another Siege Rhino now? Because it looks like Saporito decided to play the Corsair instead of the Siege Rhino that he drew for the turn. and Manus Rider hits the battlefield, gets immediately Bile Blighted.
I think it's the same Siege Rhino because it was on top of the deck, but then Corsair got put on top for Jeskai Charm.
Yeah, but he had a second Corsair. See, there's one in the graveyard. He's got 2 Siege Rhinos in his hand now, so I think that was the second one.
Okay.
Anyway, one of them's on the battlefield now with a friend to join soon, and it looks like Ondrej might just get overran here unless he has some type of sweeper or big play to get himself back in it. He's tried to play the control route through the course of this game, but with no pressure on Thiago's life total, it's just not working out for him as he's falling further and further behind.
Well, clears the board, but there's more to the equation than that.
Indeed. So Suspension Field plus Banishing Light says, well, you've got 1 creature left, but there's the Siege Rhino, the second one there for Thiago. And he immediately has a threat again. So what can Ondrej do to find his way out of this mess? Maybe find just another answer for Siege Rhino and hope that Thiago doesn't have anything left in the tank. But I think he's just passed the turn back. He did. Yep. Thiago attacks in with Siege Rhino.
Oh, my goodness.
And what has he drawn for the turn? A Wingmate Rock. Wow. So there's 6 more power, more life gain on the way. He's already at 26, and Ondrej Strasky is woefully behind here. Strasky gives a little bit of a smirk and just has to extend the hand. A great match, and Thiago Saporito is our second semifinalist here at Pro Tour Cons of Tarkir. advancing past Ondrej Strasky, who is going to have to settle for a quarterfinal loss here in his first Pro Tour top 8 at only 19 years old, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, having a Pro Tour top 8 at 19 is not bad. But, I mean, the thing I'm thinking about with that game is we talked a lot about Siege Rhino, but Wingmate Rock,
Wingmate
no
Rock,
either.
That thing's just the thunder. I mean, it comes down, and we saw it there, and I mean, you know, you look at it, and it's like that thing eats Manus Riders. It deals 6. It gains him 2 to 3 life on an attack, and it's just the raw power. I mean, look, the cards, it's not that fancy, right? Like, you look at it, it's not like, well, look at these clever. It's just like, bang, deal with this. You know, here's 2 of them.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there's so much in the set that is about these, you know, clans, that's about these wedge pairs, but you've got to have some cards that are just good to cast. You know, it showcases the raid mechanic, and you know, it's not that hard to turn on. I mean, in just 6 power, 8 toughness split over 2 cards with an additional ability for only 5 mana. I mean, that's going to be good any way you cut it. And,
yeah, I mean, it's pretty tough for Strasky to win if his opponent plays Siege Rhino, Wingmate Rock with Raid, right? I mean, that's just going to be a sequence that's going to be really tough to beat for anybody.
When we saw, I mean, again, Strasky had the answers. He had 4 Hushwing Gryphs, but he just never drew any of them. I mean, that stops Siege Rhino. It stops Wingmate Rock, but when you don't draw it, can't stop it.
Yeah,
so.
I think he was the only one. I mean, he's the only one that I saw running that card out in the field as well, Hushwing Gryph.
I heard people talking about it as a sideboard card.
Yeah.
It's kind of a 2 of or a 3 of, but definitely not 4 in the main deck.
All right, so we've got 2 more quarterfinal matches to bring you, and to prep you for them, I have Rich Hagan over at the news desk.
Thank you so much to Marshall Sutcliffe and to Zach Hill. 2 quarterfinals gone, 2 still to come. But the story of the day so far, Luis, is certainly Abzan Midrange.
Yeah, it's crushed its 2 matches pretty convincingly so far, and I think we might see that again in the 3rd.
Interesting. Well, why don't we take a look at the bracket, show you what's already happened and what is coming your way here as we wind down the morning in Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir, our top 8. The bracket looks like this. Ari Lax, we began by defeating Yuya Watanabe 2-0. That was Abzan Midrange over Jeskai wins. Then our second quarterfinal, well, that's the one that's just finished. Thiago Saporito of Brazil with his Abzan Midrange deck over Ondrej Strasky. We did see, in fairness, Luis, Jeskai wins do one sort of splurge of goodness in the middle game, but nonetheless, no way back for him. So Thiago Saporito and Ari Lax, it'll be an Abzan Midrange mirror, and coming up next, Even Flock Mike Sigris. We'll get into that in just a moment. But Luis, Lax, Saporito, how close are those 2 decks, the Abzan Midrange?
They're pretty close. Basically, Saporito has 4 Fleecemane lines and 4 Wingmate Rocks, whereas Ari has 0 Fleecemane lines, 2 Wingmate Rocks, and then Elspeth's and Ajani, Mentor of Heroes. All
right, so that's coming up after lunch, but we have the top half of the bracket coming your way, which means we're going to turn our attention to Mike Sigrist against Even Flock. So why don't we take a look at Mike Sigrist from the United States playing in his first Pro Tour top 8. Let's take a look at him right now. From team face-to-face games, he led the field 8-0 overnight, and then comfortably, he really never looked in trouble in the Swiss rounds, always looked like he was going to make it into the top 8. He has, of course, done so at age 31, his first Pro Tour top 8. That $12,000 is going to look an awful lot bigger after this event, and Silver Pro could turn literally overnight into Platinum Pro, because that's part of the prize for winning this event. 64 lifetime pro points, his 14th Pro Tour here, and great Grand Prix results in the past year. Winner of Washington, D.C., 3rd place at Richmond. All right, Luis, it's Abzan once again, but this is not really the same deck as Saporito and Lax. Let's take a look.
No, this is the smallest version of Abzan. It's the most aggressive version with, you see Rakshasa, Death Dealer, and even Heir to the Wilds. So you're looking at a lot of 2-drops and a lot of 3-drops, 3 NFNs, 4 Herald of Torment, which is actually, I was talking to him and Dave Shields in the beginning, and he said that was one of the best cards in his deck, especially in the Abzan Mirror.
Yeah, it's sometimes we always get carried away with the hype of a new set and particular mechanics that we think are going to come to the fore, and it turns out that we might be bestowing our way to glory. So remember when that was a thing? So we've also got 3 Sorin, Solemn Visitor, which we've already seen do great work for Ari Lax. That thing is super tough to deal with, and of course the 4 Siege Rhino. People that came into the event talking, Luis, about Sylvan Caryatid and Courser of Crufix as pillars of the format. Are we almost going to conflate those 2 into this one card now of Siege Rhino as the poster card for Standard moving forward?
Sidran is certainly maybe the highest impact card from the new set, and it does so many different things. Like, you see it as a kind of a bridge in Ari and Thiago's deck, where it's trying to get you to your Elspeth and Wingmate rocks, whereas in Sigrid's deck, it's just the top end of his curve and the most heavy hitting card.
Right, and so we've already got our opponent in trouble is the goal. We've got our Fleece main line out. We've got maybe our Heir of the Wilds and so on, and then, oh, and by the way, this 3-point life swing is potentially even going to kill you almost. By that, but not quite on turn 4.
Yeah, this is the deck that wants to deal the 3, not gain the 3 as much. Whereas
Right.
the other decks very much want to gain the 3.
Yeah, and incidentally, I'll lightning bolt you, as it were. All right, so that's Mike Sigrid's deck. Well, we have a guest over at the Easy Chairs. Marshall Sutcliffe has come out of the booth to talk to our latest guest, and I'm delighted to welcome to the studio set, Heather Sigrist.
Hey guys, welcome to the Easy Chair. So I am here with Heather Sigrist. Now, do you call him Siggy?
No.
No, of course you don't. Mike Sigrist's wife, of course. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. And we just wanted to get a quick chat with you about what this week was like. So have you been here the whole week with Mike?
Yes. Yes.
And so were you play testing? Like, how did that go?
So we would go to breakfast in the morning, and then I would drop him off at the house that he was at to play test. And then
you are supportive.
yeah, yeah. And a few times I brought them dinner and coffees here and there, that sort of thing.
So what's the plan for the rest of the week? I mean, you got to be just begging to get him out of there so you can go spend some quality time with the lover boy there.
Actually, I enjoy being at these tournaments, but we are looking forward to going to Maui on Tuesday.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, so we'll be doing some relaxing, and that'll be really great.
And so you're going to go chill after that, especially after the whirlwind that this weekend's turned out to be. What's it been like from your side? I mean, everybody knows we get a chance to talk to the players a lot.
Right.
But it's hard to see, a little bit of a different perspective, somebody who is rooting so hard, for, in this case, your husband to do well. Right.
I mean, I'm very, very supportive of him, and I want nothing, more than for him to win this tournament.
Do you get nervous?
Yes.
Like, is it stressful for you when you're watching?
Yes, I get a lot of anxiety watching the matches, so sometimes I have to look away, and yeah.
How much do you know about Magic? Like, are you a Magic player yourself?
No, actually, I keep telling him that he needs to teach me so I can understand a little bit better what's going on. But I mean, I understand how the game works, and so if I see it on the screen and kind of where the points are at, I understand who's winning, who's not. But as far as the overall standing, how the decks are working, I usually turn to his friends to tell me.
And they'll explain what's going on?
Yes.
Do you look for the handshake? Is that the big sign?
Well, I feel like at the end of every match, whether he loses or wins, he'll shake somebody's hand.
They always end up shaking hands, but it doesn't tell you necessarily.
No. So I never know.
Now, speaking of being taught to play Magic, I was chatting with you a little bit earlier about Mike's mother.
Yes.
Tell us about his mom.
So she's very, very supportive of him. When he was a child, she did learn how to play just so that she could play with him.
That's incredible.
And yeah, she's very, very supportive. She's been watching all the live coverage and just wants him to, excel. And
so she watches from home.
Yes.
She learned to play so that she could play with him when he was young.
Yes.
And now he has put himself in a position to be at the top of the game here, maybe even win a pro tour, at least has already made the top 8, which is already a massive accomplishment. She must be having a great time at home.
She's very excited.
Is she like calling you every minute, or?
Yes. We constantly text, just so she can get an update of, how he's doing, and yeah.
Okay. Well, Heather, thanks a lot for taking the time to give us a little bit of a different perspective than we see normally, and we'll let you get out there to root for Siggy.
Thank you.
All right, let's hand it back to the news desk where Rich Hagan awaits.
Thanks very much to Marshall Sutcliffe and to Heather Sigrist. Best of luck to her and to husband Mike. Hope you're rooting at home, Mum. Meanwhile, the players are just about ready. Zach, give us one line about Even Flock playing blue-black control, looking for back-to-back Pro Tour titles. What does the control mage have to do to stem the Abzan tide?
I think it needs to cast a discard spell on turn 1 to deal with the 2-drop, and then I think it needs to draw Silence the Believers to deal with everything else.
All right, good answer. It is time for our third quarterfinal here at Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir. Will it be Abzan? Will it be blue-black control? Sigrist, Flock, right now.